With the release of No Breaths from Hell, Kubo's latest one-shot, we've been shown updated versions of our favorite old characters, and even been introduced to some new ones. The character that's grabbed my attention the most is Atau Rindo, the new vice captain of Squad 7. So, in this video, we're going to be breaking down everything we know about him, and figuring out if he'll even be relevant in the hopefully upcoming Hell arc. But before we get into it, if you enjoyed this video, a like and sub would be much appreciated as a small channel. Now, onto Atau. As I said earlier, Atau is the new vice captain of Squad 7, taking Iba's spot after his promotion to captain. Atau is also either deaf, mute, or both. It's difficult to tell which because the manga can make it seem kind of confusing. Iba shouts Atau's name to get his attention, but Atau seems to need to use sign language and lip reading to communicate with people. Atau also solely uses sign language to talk, so that makes me think that he is mute. But despite the confusion surrounding Atau, I think he is both deaf and mute, but not a true mute. I think he can technically speak, but his deafness impacted his ability to learn and speak spoken word, so he chooses to just use sign language. But regarding Iba shouting to him to get his attention, I think this can be explained a few different ways. One, Iba is an idiot and just forgot that he can't hear due to the stress of the ritual preparations. Or Iba isn't an idiot and just decided to shout to disrupt the animals. Either way, it's likely that due to the shouting, the animals got startled, Atau noticed, and turned to see Iba. Or two, Atau is not deaf, but simply hard of hearing, and he just heard Iba shouting because Iba shouted loud enough for him to hear him. And three, but this is more of a theory, Atau can't hear humans, but can hear animals. So Iba shouted to the animals, and the animals relayed the message to Atau. Now, I think this idea is a bit out there, but considering Atau's abilities, which we'll get into in a bit, it's not too far-fetched. I think it's definitely a possibility, but I think option 1 is the best and most likely option here. Some people also bring up Atau saying "I heard" to assume he's only mute, but I think this is just a figure of speech, similar to a blind person saying "I see." Moving on, considering his responses and overall body language, it's safe to assume that Atau is a very kind, calm, and mild-mannered person. He's completely understanding and accepting of Ichigo's inability to use sign language. He also shows an appreciation for animals, which ties into his Zanpakuto. Right now, I'd normally give the name of his Zanpakuto, but he seemingly doesn't have one, as when he writes his release command, "Give Birth," he doesn't follow it up with a name. It's possible he's doing something similar to Yumichika and intentionally not giving it a name to release it into a different form. But unfortunately, there's currently no way to tell, so we just have to assume that his Zanpakuto is nameless. His Shikai takes the form of a segmented whip, with the segments resembling Shikigami talismans that are all attached to each other. After he releases his Zanpakuto, he signs Taka, or Hawk, and the talismans change into hawks. Presumably, this means if he signed a different species of animal, the talismans would turn into that animal. I really like this ability personally. I think it allows for a lot of freedom in his fighting style and ensures he'll be resourceful on and off the battlefield. I mean, think about it. If he can change the species his Shikai changes into, he would be like the perfect ninja. He can hide and just release his Zanpakuto into, say, a snake and take down enemies without them even knowing he was there, especially considering he can sign or write his commands on the blade. From what we've seen, he's already fairly powerful, and he seems to have a lot of potential, so I'm excited to see more of him. So, will we see more of him? I'm gonna go with an optimistic maybe. Either Kubo really stepped up his designs for background characters, or Atau and possibly Yayahara are gonna be somewhat relevant in this next arc. I certainly hope they don't follow in their captain's footsteps and get the Lisa and Iba treatment at the very least. Now, onto my theories as to how he'd be relevant. Depending on what culture Kubo draws from for Hell, it's possible we may see Cerberus. Having Atau, an animal lover, go up against Cerberus, a dog, would certainly make a fair bit of sense. Or, if Kubo draws from Chinese mythology, for example, it's possible we may see Oxhead and Horseface, another pair of animal-like creatures. That would be another animal tie-in that would make a fair bit of sense, but again, I am just speculating. Regardless of if he'll be relevant, Atau is a really unique character with some really interesting powers, and it's cool to see some deaf representation as well. I can't wait to see where the Hell arc goes, and I'm waiting excitedly for any news about it. So, that's all we know about Atau Rindo, the new vice captain of Squad 7. Thanks for watching, and that's all for now.